Who is the most famous person you've spoken to? My wife took my son to a local Comic-Con 6 years ago while I had to work. Struck up a conversation about the weather with a nice older gentleman. 2 days later she hears his voice on TV and says that guy sounds exactly like him. Proceeded to show her his picture and confirmed she chatted about the weather with Batman, Adam West. Neil Armstrong. I was at the NASA Museum at Cape Canaveral, British tourist, but I also happen to be a teacher. They have an educators-only section, where teachers etc. can go and get loads of freebies for use in school. Whilst there, Neil Armstrong came in with his grandchildren and began greeting and chatting with people at random, including me. He was pleased to meet the British teacher of STEM and was a lovely bloke. Everyone, including me, was in awe. Guy Fieri. I was drunk, bar-rossing, it's like 10 p.m, and am walking along to the next bar and I'm like, that guy looks like Guy Fieri. He's walking towards me. So as we pass, I give him a second look and am like, that guy actually really does look like Guy Fieri. So I pass him, and a second later I decide there is no way that guy isn't Guy Fieri. So I turn around and shout, hey, you're Guy Fieri, and he turns around and he's like, yeah, and I respond, that's cool. Then I turn back and continue to where I was going because I realized I didn't really have anything more to say to him other than that. He was by himself too. No entourage, no crowd. Nothing. I guess he might have been scouting out food spots in the area or something. I was seeing a Broadway show with my mom in 1992. At intermission she found me in the downstairs lobby and excitedly said, I just saw Meryl Streep in the bathroom. I said, please tell me you didn't say anything to her and you just left her alone. She said, I was very good, and didn't say anything. Look, here she comes now. And I said, I'm glad you didn't say anything to her because that's Glenn Close. Carrie Fisher. I was wearing a red Darth Vader shirt that said choking hazard and she laughed when she saw it, and said I love your shirt. I was trying not to gush, and asked her if I could pet her dog Gary. We chatted for a few, mostly about Gary. She was super warm, and funny. It felt almost like talking to a sister rather than a film star. Not sure if this counts, but Charles Schulz, the creator of the Peanuts comics, was a big idol of mine when I was in middle and high school, and I was obsessed with his work after doing a huge research project about his life. When I was 16, I was in a production of the musical You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, and right before the performance, they announced that Schulz's daughter, Amy, was in the audience, along with 3 of his grandkids and his first, and only at the time, great-grandson. I was freaking out at the idea that I was about to perform a musical for the Schulz estate. Right after the show I went out to meet them in the audience and expressed how much I admired Amy's father and the impact he had on my life. She was amazed because she didn't think people my age cared much about his work, and thought that his legacy had really only lingered with older generations. But here I was saying I knew everything about his life and work and was honored to meet them. At the end of our conversation, she asked for my mailing address so she could send me some autograph books and other merch. It was one of the coolest experiences of my life. Kevin Bacon didn't recognize it was him, politely asked if his flight companion was Kyra Sedgwick, whom I recognized. SMH. His expression was of mild surprise, which then made me realize I was missing something. Amy Lee from Evanescence. I was working first aid as a gig and she came out after the show and started chatting to us while we were waiting for the venue to empty out and get the all clear to pack up our post. She was genuinely shocked to learn I was only 15 or 16 and gave me a hug for all my work helping their fans. Conan O'Brien. I worked at Dodger Stadium selling beer for the 2018 World Series. He calls me over and bought a couple of beers, looked at him and said, "Well, I guess I don't need to check your ID." He said that's sweet, and chuckled. He tipped me $10 too. George Carlin. This was over a decade ago when he did a performance at the River Rock Casino in Richmond, BC. I saw him outside, said hi and told him I was a big fan in my broken English. He smiled, nodded and grunted like the old fuck he was and went back inside the building. He died 8 months later and the world needs him more than ever. Michael Jackson. When I was little in the 80s, my family lived in LA and I took dance classes at the same studio as Nicole Richie. One day her dad Lionel showed up to pick her up from class with his friend Michael. He looked exactly like he did on TV at the time, with the military-style jacket with a bunch of glittery stuff on it, etc. I was too awestruck to say anything except hello. He was very quiet and polite. I made a ham sandwich for Larry Bird. Twice. Mayo, mustard or hot peppers, Mr. Bird? Edit 1. I also thought the people of Reddit would like to know that the second time I made him a sandwich, he asked to take a picture with me. My boss asked him to send the picture to her work email so we could print it out and put it on the wall, but Larry dropped the ball on that one. Shaq. Twice, both at Universal Studios. Once when I was on vacation there when I was 14, and then again when I lived in Orlando and I was 28. Very nice dude both times. He must love Universal Studios as much as me. Edit. Shaq may be the most globally famous person I've met, but the most famous to me and more meaningful to me was Monty from the Stone Roses. Met him in a kebab shop in Stockport. Was super fucking cool and shared a joint with me in a park while we ate our kebabs. Top fucking bloke. Bono. He was in town for TIFF and came into the restaurant I worked at because we had a back room that could be closed off. He, I assume his manager, and 4 absolute smoke shows arranged to eat during our closed period between lunch and dinner so they wouldn't be bothered too much and also wouldn't interfere with our business hours. I was the bartender, so I really only brought a couple bottles of water to the table and asked if he needed anything, but he was extremely gracious about it all. The server went on and on about how nice he was to him. Funnily enough, Madonna wanted to eat there as well, and her manager was giving the hostess a hard time. Near as I can remember, the exchange went like so. Manager: I have a VIP who needs you to clear out her back room and make sure it stays clear until she's finished. Host: I would, ma'am, but there's someone dining back there right now who I can't ask to move. Do you know who you're talking to? This is Madonna's agent. You need to clear that room immediately. H: It's Bono. Well, I guess he's alright. Diane Keaton. She was a weird little peach and came up to my friends and I at a flea market. Edit. One more dash. I didn't talk to him, because I don't like bugging people, but eating dinner at the table next to Jason Mantzoukas and his friends was hilarious. He's just as loud and animated as you'd think, lol. I worked a small dinner party, 12 people, where I served dinner to Jimmy Carter. He and his wife were on their way home from a trip to China and he stopped in Washington State for a fundraising dinner, but she continued on to Georgia. He took a break between dinner and dessert to call Rosal in to make sure she made it home safely and say goodnight. After dessert he came back to the kitchen to thank the chef and myself. He was just the nicest guy. Worked at a high-end hotel. Had one very high-ranking member of government pissed at me because they thought something had been taken from their room. Note: I was not housekeeping or security, but the only manager brave enough to deal with them on property law. Had a noise complaint on another very high member of government. TV too loud. Waited 20 minutes cause they were old and it was 9:30 p.m. Sure enough, it was off when we walked back by. Japanese princess. but we weren't allowed to look at her because she was descended from a god. Anthony Anderson, who was an absolute delight. Danny Trejo, who is an absolute gem of the man. Craig Robson, nice guy, but I'm pretty sure he thinks I was like light staking him as there was a leak in the hallway where his room was, and I was hanging out in the hall waiting for engineering to tell me if I was going to have to wake up and move a couple at 1 a.m. on their wedding night. I didn't have to. The royal family of Liechtenstein, they came a few times a year and very chill, carried their own luggage. Oh, and Chris Brown, who was as big and as you would imagine. Late 1997 at a bar in Florida, some friends and I go to a punk show. I'm sitting at the bar waiting for the band to start and I decide to engage the guy next to me. I recognized him but didn't want to go all manic fanboy about what he was doing there. He was acting as the tour manager. After the show, my friends and I are waiting for a ride outside when the singer of the band and my new conversation partner come outside. My friends all mob the singer for autographs and all boy just stands back with a huge smile, probably because he's relieved he isn't getting mobbed. I walk up, tell him it was nice meeting him, and we go our separate ways. My friends ask me why I was talking to the tour manager, and I finally can't contain it anymore and inform them that yeah, it was cool seeing the singer, former Misfits guitarist Bobby Steele, but I was talking to Joey Ramone. I bumped into Mick Foley about 20 years ago at Six Flags Ska in NJ, wasn't watching where I was going, and just walked right into him without realizing it was him. I apologized. He gave me a pat on the back. No worries, have a nice day. As he's walking away, I realize who it was, and one of my friends looked at me. Did mankind just tell you to have a nice day? This is bizarre, but I once met Robert De Niro whilst taking a piss in a pub toilet in a small village in Buckinghamshire, UK called the Lee, place where they also filmed episodes of Midsomer Murders, which is kind of a popular show in the UK if people hadn't heard of it. Anyway, there was a village-type fete going on and I popped into the pub to go to the toilet. As I was taking a piss, someone stood next to me to take a piss as well, and I just happened to glance to the side for a second and thought the side of that guy's face fucking looks like Robert De Niro. As I zipped up and turned, I glanced again and thought that is fucking Robert De Niro, so I went to wash my hands all the while, thinking I need to talk to Robert De Niro, but how can I in a fucking pub toilet? I washed my hands like 3 times waiting for him to finish pissing in the hope to get some form of conversation from him. He come over and washed his hands whilst having a slight smirk look on his face, knowing I'd washed my hands 3 times after taking a piss just so I could say hello. He's obviously been in this type of situation before. Suddenly, with our hands wet and dripping, we both looked towards the hand dryer and back again. I said, "You can go first, mate," and I think he said something along the lines of "Cheers, kid." I was 35 at the time, so I was not a kid, but I didn't care because it was fucking Robert De Niro. In 1999 I met the whole Smash Mouth band. I was staying the summer with my aunt in Michigan. The neighbor's kids saw them at a bait and tackle shop and her dad invited them back to their house to fish. There was a tour bus parked in the neighbor's driveway all weekend. Steve refused to sign autographs, but the rest of the band did and showed us the tour bus. I remember one of the band members had a Nickelodeon photo blaster camera he took pictures with. Steve also ran my cousin's boat into a sandbar and jumped in the lake fully clothed to push it off of it. Emma Watson. I worked at a store on Thayer Street in Providence when she went to Brown. I also worked on the same street at my cousin's pizza, a place that she loved, so I literally would see and talk to her multiple times a week. Super nice, quiet and polite. This was also the time where she would have a male friend go out with her and speak for her BC. As soon as she opened her mouth, you knew it was Hermione Granger from a mile away. Not me, but a friend of mine went to Mike Ditka's restaurant in Chicago. He was by himself and had a table. They asked him if he would mind eating at the bar since it was so busy. He said sure, and Mike Ditka was at the restaurant that day and came over and thanked him. He sat next to him and they talked for a while. He said some attractive woman came over and started talking to Mike and he got up and left my friend, but a pretty cool interaction, especially for my friend who is a huge Bears fan. I would say this was in the mid to late 90s. I used to work at a resort where celebs would occasionally stay. Among the people I served were Bryan Cranston, David Sedaris, the Avett Brothers, Tangerine Dream, Kraftwerk, Bruce Johnston from the Beach Boys, random U.S. senators and professional athletes, and probably a lot of other people I didn't recognize. Each and every one of them were extremely kind with no trace of ego, although some only ordered room service. And I understand that J-Lo was a bit of a diva, and James Franco can be sketchy AF. I heard that Jerry Seinfeld was actually quite friendly. I met David Hasselhoff outside of a Whole Foods. He was wearing a shirt that said "Don't hassle the Hoff." I said hi to him. He came up to me. He is extremely tall, put his huge arms around me and gave me a hug and said that he loves the gays. I was wearing a gay pride shirt. He also has the bluest eyes I've ever seen, like piercing blue. Bill Gates worked at Tulip Computers back in the day and he was our biggest business partner. You know, computers coming up on Windows as an operating system. Genuinely nice guy and always greeted everyone. Was on a first-name basis with him. He didn't want me to call him Mr. Gates because it was too formal. Good memories of that place. The dog who played Beethoven in the movie, the most famous human at the time, could have walked right past me. All my 2-year-old self cared about was hugging the dog as big as I was. The same would hold true today. If I were invited to the White House, my full attention would be on Champ and Major. John Cleese bumped into him in Harrod's pet department, when that still existed. He was buying an expensive cat which he let my girlfriend and I hold and play with. Didn't realize who it was until afterwards, and I saw him again from a distance and realized why he looked familiar. I'm kind of glad, as we had a nice normal interaction which I probably would have made awkwardness unknown. I was raised on Monty Python and Fawlty Towers. Mike Tyson ... when I was about 8 years old, and my neighbor, friend came to my house and told my family that Mike Tyson was coming over to buy pigeons from her father. I guess he is an avid pigeon collector. Being such a random and outrageous claim, we didn't believe her, but sure enough, about an hour later he shows up with his entourage in about 20 cars to buy some pigeons. The only thing I had with me was a soccer ball, so he signed it for me and I still have it to this day. Robin Williams. My senior year of college in 2010, I worked security, which was mostly just crowd control. I was stationed on a side hallway of the venue but not backstage, and he wandered out, introduced himself and chatted with me and the janitor for a few minutes before a very frantic stage manager told him it was time to go on stage. He looked at us and said sorry, but I've got to go work now, and went to start the show. Barack and Michelle Obama. My grandparents are buried in Arlington. We were there about 10 years ago putting flowers on the gravestones, and the motorcade rolled up and the security blocked us from getting back to our car. Turns out it was the Obamas there for a photo op or something. We got to talk with them for 10 minutes or so. Definitely didn't expect that. Adam Sandler. My husband, 3 kids and I were newly living in SoCal, and my son wanted to see the Hollywood sign. We get there and it's crowded and the stroller won't really be a great option, so we turn around and head to 3rd Street Promenade and the Santa Monica Pier. We park in a random mall garage and head towards the promenade. We have to stop to make a baby bottle and get hot water from a coffee shop so the bottle is warm. My husband is feeding the baby and I'm playing with the 2 older kids. Suddenly, My husband gets a weird look on his face and won't tell me what's wrong. He shows me his phone where he typed "I'm pretty sure that's Adam Sandler," and he nods to a guy sitting nearby with an old flip phone, basketball shorts, a crazy hoodie and sunglasses on. My kids move to a different table nearby and my oldest creates a game and Adam Sandler is just giggling watching them play. We finish feeding the baby and start to walk away, debating saying hi. I forced my husband to say hi because he loves him and the kids and I waited back. Adam Sandler fist bumps him, tells him he has a wonderful family and tells the kids and I to come over for a picture. We take one, walk away and my son says, "Who was that?" And we said he's a comedian, not in movies you've seen. His name is Adam Sandler and our son says, "You mean the one who plays Dracula in Hotel Transylvania?" Which was their favorite movie at the time. We've always kicked ourselves for not telling my son before saying hi. He loves telling people he made Adam Sandler laugh.